Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show, broadcasting on spiritualitygonewild.com and the American Gumption Facebook and American Gumption YouTube channels. So welcome all. Today is Wednesday, March 3rd, show number 136. Man, 136 already. So today we are going to interview Nicole Nassif. She has a brand new restaurant concept, and Nicole and I met in 1998 in Chicago when the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company opened up back then. And Nicole was a bartender. And so she's come a long way in the last many years. So anyway, we'll interview her and we'll talk about her restaurant concept that she's launching right now. And I'm happy and honored to share that whole vision and let her tell that story. So that'll be coming up at about 15 past the hour. Now, you'll remember a couple weeks ago, we did a Bubba Gump interview with Dave Trombetta, and we talked about the very first Bubba Gump Shrimp opening in Monterey, California. So Chicago opened a couple years later. I think it was restaurant number 4. And but anyway, this is like kind of the back to the beginning route. So the reason why I'm mentioning all this is that my monologue today is going to be on the Bubba Gump Shrimp grand openings. Now, you know, again, we spoke a few weeks ago about the specific first restaurant opening, but I'm going to just speak generally about what all the restaurant openings look like after that. And Nicole participated in many of those. So I'll just share that part of the story before we get into the conversation with her. Now, later this week, we got a couple more live shows coming up on Thursday and Friday, tomorrow and Friday. Stacy Lamar King returns tomorrow. He was with us about a month ago and told his story of being a military guy for 22 years and then getting out and just launching right into his career as a trainer for project management, and how he ended up kind of crashing and burning and needed to get some help, and did. And so post-traumatic stress disorder, you know, and he recovered from that. So the last interview was all about that. This time we're going to talk about project management, which is really what his expertise is. So that'll be tomorrow's show. And then on Friday, Jay Toops comes back one more time. He was here last Friday, and we started the conversation about converting waste carbons to alcohol fuels. And but this time we're going to get more into a little bit how the technology works. And we're also going to talk about the social and political will that's needed to really make this happen. So that's an environmental conversation that we're going to have on Friday. All righty. So that's it. Okay. Without anything else, let's go ahead and let me launch into my monologue. And again, I'm titling it the Bubba Gump Shrimp Grand Openings or Openings, Bubba Gump Shrimp Openings. All righty. So let's turn that off. All right. So during my 15 years with Bubba Gump, I participated in 22 U.S. location openings and 7 international grand openings. And they all kind of, you know, initially they weren't all the same, because it was like, you know, we did number 1 and then we did number 2 and 3. But, you know, pretty quickly, a theme was established and it worked in a certain way. And so this conversation or this monologue is just going to be about what I observed happening, because I was not, you know, I was there and I was doing my thing. I was doing the Gump thing, but, you know, I had a front row seat to watching what happened, and I didn't have to actually do any of the things I'm going to talk about other than show up and do my Gump thing. But so this is kind of a description of what I saw. So the first thing that needed to happen was that a location needed to be picked, you know, and a lease signed, and, you know, and they always picked locations in high traffic foot areas and in touristy spots. And so they went for A locations. They were not, you know, they didn't want any drive up locations. They wanted places that people were walking by and could spontaneously fit in. So the corporate people were responsible for finding those locations, and they were always out scouting around, looking at places and thinking, oh, would this be a good spot? Would this be a good spot? And that was like an ongoing process. And so that was always happening. And then once they sort of found the spot, they had to negotiate it. And, you know, it would take, gosh, some of these things took years to finally just get a deal in place and an agreement to go into a spot. So once that was established, or once the agreement happened, then you ended up having a construction company come in and remodel the place. Basically, they gut it out and they'd redo it. Mostly they just gut the entire thing out and just start fresh with it. There was rare, but they would have to, like there was obviously the outside walls that needed to kind of stay the same. But even the outside, they changed the outside to look like, an old shrimp type of a restaurant. So that would take like at least from the time, I don't know how long, but from the time the contract was signed until it was like basically pretty much ready, it was like a year, maybe a little more. So while that was going on, a new restaurant management team would be hired. So there'd be a general manager and a kitchen manager. And these people would end up showing up and working at the different existing locations, sometimes for a couple months in advance, maybe even a year, where they get trained and they'd understand the operation. So by the time they actually took over running that restaurant, they had been kind of seasoned in terms of working at someone else's restaurant, another location, and were trained and running. So there was a general manager, there was a kitchen manager, there was assistant managers, there was a sales manager, there was a merchandise manager, and again, mostly all those people would be hired in advance, and that team would then end up showing up on location. Usually, I don't know how much, but maybe 2 months in advance. And then they'd be there and they'd set up an office somewhere. They didn't have access to the building yet. And they'd hire people. They'd hire 75, 150 people, depending on the size of the location. And they just, hired a ton of people. So now we're out at maybe, a couple of weeks before the restaurant actually opens. And again, they usually didn't have access to the building, but they would be, like I said, hiring. Well, all of a sudden, they get access to the building and all these new employees show up, and simultaneously this opening team would show up. Now, the opening team were selected people from the various different restaurants around the country, the different Bubba Gump locations, and they would come and they'd spend the next, usually about 3 weeks, maybe longer, 3 to 4 weeks, and they would work hard, and they would train all of these new employees, because the restaurant team, the opening management team, was like 6-7 people. They couldn't train all these people. So there was an additional 20 to maybe 25 people who showed up from around the country. And that was what was called the opening team. And it would be like a beehive of activity. So you have 100 new employees, you have 25 people from around the country there to help. You have corporate people, you have the actual restaurant management team that's going to stay there. And everything just kind of almost like turning a light bulb switch or a switch on the wall. It just all started happening. And this activity would go on for, usually about 2 weeks before the restaurant opened. And then a couple of weeks after it opened. And then little by little, they'd send the opening team home as people got trained. So as you got these new employees coming in and getting trained, the opening team, right, the experts from around the country there to help, they'd be identifying people who, had potential to be leaders, and they'd ask them if they'd be trainers. That was sort of the next level up from being just hired to be either a front of the house or the back of the house. You'd be a trainer, and then you would train new people that came on board. So within like a couple of days, people are being already identified and groomed to be trainers. And so that, the train the trainer thing happened. So all this is going on. Now, I kind of would, as Gump, I would show up at kind of the last minute, and all this would have already taken place. And, I was there for my specific purpose, and that was to promote the restaurant. I didn't end up doing TV and radio appearances, and I'd go visit hotels all around. I'd work with the new local sales manager in terms of, helping to get the word out on the street. And again, there was a PR company that was hired. So all this stuff is happening simultaneously behind the scenes at the restaurant with the trainers and all the outside people. And then I'm coming in and I'm just sort of doing this thing. And I'd float in and out of the restaurant all the time because, I'd have some place to go and be, and then I'd come back. But before that happened, and it became like kind of there was an all employee general meeting. And that was really the kickoff of when Gump would show up. And so what would happen is they'd have this all employee meeting, all the team is there, all the corporate people are there. Now, this is usually like 2 or 3 or maybe 4 days before the actual opening of the restaurant. So very close to the opening. And it would be, these employees would have already been there for about a week in training. And there's like this energy that was going on, and they're like ratcheting these people up. And I used to kind of call it like a winding, like an airplane with a rubber band. And they would wind these people up so tight with like enthusiasm and chanting and ranting. And, it was like a frat party or a sorority party, it was just this big, energetic, fun, massive thing going on. And the corporate people are all around and all this stuff. And so anyway, this general employee meeting would happen, and the management team, the opening restaurant team, they'd all speak. The new general manager would introduce his team. The outside trainers, they'd all get introduced. And people kind of knew who everybody was at this point generally, but people got introduced and, blah, 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 just going on. And then some of the corporate people spoke. And then the president of the company would always speak. And he'd give this thing, and he'd to tell people that they're the best of the best. And, they hired them because, and they really did. They hired people who had great personalities because it was a very social atmosphere. And they figured we can train you to serve food and take an order, but we can't train you to be a nice person and have a fun personality. And so that was the kind of people that were hired. So they were doing this. So the president's doing his speech, and there was always some kind of agreed upon cue that he would give. And then Gump, myself, would come running into the party. And it was like, because these people were wound up so tight with like this rubber band, it was like pandemonium. And because now suddenly Gump is like in the building, and it was really a lot of fun. I had so much fun doing it. And that was really where I developed my love for standing up in front of a crowd and speaking. And then, of course, I developed the motivational message, and I've been speaking for the last 10 plus years, message of Gumption, personal responsibility. And that all started from those openings. And my little talks then would only be about 7 to 10 minutes long, but it was enough of a flavor to get it whole started. And then after that, I was like part of the opening team. I would be milling around and, saying hello to people and, offering chocolates and that sort of thing. So that is my monologue on the Bubba Gump openings for today. So it was kind of a fun little trip back memory lane. And the restaurateurs, the people who operated, that they knew what they were doing. They were smart people, and they did a great job of organizing it and creating systems and, getting it down to where it was kind of like it was like kind of like a science, just people showed up and the opening team people knew what they were doing. And this came in, and Nicole, who I'm going to introduce in just a second, she was part of that. She did many, many of those openings. And so we got to know each other during that time, even though what I was doing and what she was doing was very different, but we were in the same building doing what we both did. So, all righty. Well, with that, I think we're ready to invite Nicole to come on board. She is in the green room, all warmed up. Nicole, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for, so we knew each other, and we connected on LinkedIn years ago, stayed in touch, hadn't talked in a long time. And I saw that you had worked at different restaurant groups over the years after you left Bubba Gump and after I left Bubba Gump. And so we were connected, but, anyway, then a few weeks ago, we reconnected, and you shared with me what you're doing. So we would like to talk about that, if that's okay.
Awesome. First of all, I loved the monologue. I literally was back there in those moments when you were explaining it. I could see the stage. I could see you running it. I mean, it was that perfect description of what happened.
It was a lot of fun. It was, and there was a lot of energy. It was pandemonium.
It was the perfect description.
All righty. Well, here's what I'd like to do. I've got two things that I always do when a new guest, first-time guest shows up. And hopefully you'll be agreeable. I like to read a bio and explain who you are. That's not too much trouble for you because you just have to, keep quiet for a minute and let me do one more little thing. And then we have a first-time guest welcoming song, and I just play the song and you don't have to do anything other than enjoy it. So can I get you to agree to those things in advance? All righty. Well, good. We'll explain why there might have been a little bit of nervousness afterwards. So anyway, so who is Nicole Nassif? She is the CEO and creative force behind Imee's Kitchen. Am I saying that correctly? Imee.
Imee's.
Imee's. Imee. Okay, good. Not Imee though, for short. Imee. Imee. And we'll tell you, and you can explain what Imee means in just a minute. All right. So she is the creative force behind Imee's Kitchen, a brand new restaurant concept currently in development. She brings over 25 years of restaurant experience to Imee's Kitchen. Nicole gained this experience with established corporations such as Chuck E. Cheese and the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. During her career, she has participated in over 100 restaurants openings worldwide and directly supervised sales of over 20 million. A lot of sales. Anyway, Nicole went into independent fine dining after that, and fine dining properties where she learned the administrative side of the business. It was at Nicole's most recent company, Furious Spoon, under a Michelin-starred chef, where she was introduced to the food hall concept. And I do not know what that is, so you're going to explain that in a few minutes. She then designed and operated multiple food hall units, most notably the Revival Food Hall in Chicago's Loop. Nicole is now taking years of experience and translating it to Imee's Kitchen. Imee's is a quick-serve restaurant concept featuring fresh, made-to-order bowls, pitas, and combinations that will open up Lebanese cuisine to a brand broad new audience. The menu is the product of pure tradition. Recipes from 3 generations of women in Nicole's family will be featured, promising fine-tuned and authentic flavors from the Eastern Mediterranean. Nicole Nassif, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show.
Thank you.
Now, the song. Here we go. First time guest song. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to either a grand opening or a broadcast?
I do not think I have.
That was the one thing we'd ever had was marching bands come in. We had everything else though.
For a minute to think about if there was one, because I wouldn't have put it past anybody. I was like, wait, was there? But there wasn't.
There was a lot of craziness that happened during those days. So, well, good. So 1998, you joined Bubba Gump as a bartender, and you were probably one of those new hires that then they said, hey, do you want to be a trainer?
That's exactly what happened.
Exactly. Good. Well, hey, before we talk more about that, we have Bettina saying hello from Seattle, and we have Kim showing up too this morning.
Trainer.
People are already cheering us on. All righty. So You worked you worked for Bubba Gump for 10 years, and was Chuck E. Cheese before that?
I did. I worked for Chuck E. Cheese for 10 years before Bubba Gump Shrimp Company.
And so you had I never knew that part, but you had for whatever reason you just like that atmosphere of doing it, and you were one of those people who dug in and did the work.
Well, I got the job at Chuck E. Cheese, which was so long ago. It was actually Showbiz Pizza at that time, because my brother had his birthday party there, and the person serving us went, "Hey, you should get a job." And I was like, "Okay." So I turned in an application, and the manager was like, "Well, you're only 15. You have to wait until you're 16. Well, my birthday is exactly 3 weeks after my brother's. So at 16, I went back in, and I was walking into the Showbiz, and this guy was walking. I swear this is a true story. This guy was walking in behind me, and I opened the door and went, "Hi, welcome to Showbiz." Well, it turned out that was the general manager of the restaurant that I was interviewing with. So he's like, "Okay, you're hired." And then, much like the story you just told about Bubba Gump openings, Chuck E. Cheese is exactly the same. And I actually was in charge of their new unit opening. So I stayed there for 10 years and was a regional trainer for them. And I opened about 75 units for Chuck E. Cheese before going to Bubba Gump. And at that time, I was young. I was traveling all the time. All my friends were going to Cubs games. And I was like, that's it. I got to do something fun. I'm too young to do what I was doing. And then I was bartending at Planet Hollywood, and Rob Berger walked in and was like, which Rob, and he walked in and said, "Hey, we're opening this restaurant on Navy Pier." He actually knew the other bartender. She had dated his friend or something. And so she was like, "Nicole, just come with me." I wasn't even going to go. She took me with them, and I stayed there for 10 years. It's crazy how things just kind of happen that way.
Yeah, there are no coincidences. Things always happen for reasons. And I did not know that, but I did know right away when you were there that you were, most of the people were 18, 19, 20, 21 who were hired, and you were maybe just a few years older because you had that other experience. And so, it's quite a bit of difference between someone who's in their mid to late 20s as opposed to 18 or 19. And so anyway, you just did a good job. You were at the right place at the right time, because Bubba Gump was kind of a brand new concept. And you then participated in, I'm guessing, every one of the openings that they did for the next 10 years.
I think there were only one or two that I didn't do. I mean, I even did the ones in, like, remember the amusement parks that they did?
Oh, yeah.
Small ones. I even did a couple of those. But yeah, I mean, there were several of those as well.
Yeah. Well, very good. So what happened after you left Bubba Gump? You said you went into, your resume says fine dining. What happened at that point?
I just kind of wanted to stay in restaurants. I decided to got a job as a general manager of a fine dining property. I actually had moved back to Detroit at that time because my family's there. And I was running a fine dining restaurant downtown Detroit where I was, I say all the time, when you're with big corporations, there's a lot that you learn, and the nuts and bolts of restaurants are spectacular. But there's also a lot that you don't know just because of the sheer size of the corporations. For example, I never paid sales tax. I never had to get a license because those were departments that you called. Hey, I need this. Hey, I need that. Well, when you're running one restaurant, there is no other department. It's you. So when I say I learned the administrative side, there just were several things that I had no exposure to at those large corporations. So that's what I kind of really started to understand. That was a time in Detroit, especially, where they were really trying to lure businesses in. So I learned about rent zone abatements and how to get money. I mean, just things that I would have never known, no matter how great I was at some of those companies, because that just wasn't the role that I would have been exposed to.
And then did you, over the next 8 or 10 years, did you stay in that type of a role?
I did. For the most part. I think, again, when you're at the Chuck E. Cheese's and the Bubba Gump, and keep in mind, when I started with Bubba Gump, they were still peeling every shrimp. We were still making everything fresh. The big thing in training was the 18 ingredients in the clam chowder that you had to learn. So there was definitely a menu component at Bubba's that for a long time, I can't speak to what it is now or anything, but for a long time was very fresh and very handmade.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got into kind of fine dining, I started working with higher end chefs, and I really realized how much I didn't know about food, how much I didn't know about technique. I knew how to order food, I knew how to inventory food, I knew how to cost food, but some of the techniques and the constant changing menus and how you had to do ongoing training, not to mention my exposure to wine at that point, really started to grow. And I was like, I like this. I like that I have this nuts and bolts background, but now I'm able to build upon that with a freshness component, with really understanding food and wine pairings. Then I moved back to Chicago and kind of became the person. There was a migration for a long time with high-end Michelin-starred chefs going from these fine dining locations to these quick serve, fast casual properties because the money was just better. The overhead is so much lower. You get more volume. And a lot of Michelin-starred chefs, I say all the time, are savant-like. I mean, they're so good at what they do, but they don't know how to run payroll, or they don't know how to file an LLC, or they don't know any sort of HR. So for a while, I just became the person where somebody would say, hey, you want to open another concept? This is the girl you call. And that's how that kind of migrated. So I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of great people here in Chicago and meet a lot of people, especially chefs that I just respect so much.
And what is a Michelin star chef? I don't know.
So Michelin is it's actually the tire company. And, when you travel, you used to get the Michelin guides. So in the restaurant industry, Michelin stars are what you strive for. You can get up to 3. I think there's only 11 3-Michelin starred restaurants in the United States. It's very, very hard. Inspectors go in for an entire year. You don't know who they are. They evaluate you on food and service. And from a chef perspective, if you get a Michelin star, it's quite an achievement for you and that restaurant.
So these Michelin star chefs are working in fine dining, but then they realize that a better way to go is to simplify the concept, maybe, still serve good food, but, speed up the whole process and not, get rid of the white tablecloth or at least minimize that kind of stuff. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, that's it.
And then you became the go-to person to help these people.
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So were you working for a restaurant doing this, or were you kind of just like freelancing at that point, helping?
It depended. Sometimes I freelanced as a consultant. There were a couple companies that they just hired me on because, the last company they hired me on, because I opened, 10 of those in the span of 2 or 3 years. So it just really depended on exactly what they needed me for. Some people had some existing infrastructure already, and I just kind of gave some advice. And some people, I actually did the work. It just depended.
So at some point, like the light bulb goes off on top of Nicole's head, and she says, gee, why am I helping all these other people do it? Why don't I create my own concept? Is that sort of what happened?
It's literally what happened. And my friend Matt will tell you that we were sitting at a bar, and he will tell the story. He's like, you stopped talking. And he's like, I didn't know what happened in your head. He's like, but it was literally, that's exactly what happened.
So it's kind of like a divine, like source energy came down, tapped you on the shoulder, whispered in your ear, and said, here's what you're going to do next. That's
literally what happened.
How long ago was that, roughly? Like a year, 2, 3?
It was, I think it was 2018, because I had just left that company at the end of 2017. And I was like, what am I going to do? And then that's when I said, okay. So yeah, I built this business and incorporated in May of 2018.
Wow. So, and I've got some slides I want to share, and you can describe what they are. But the question is, last year, of course, was kind of a game-changing year for the entire world. Did that, how did that work for what you've been doing? Was that was that a real hindrance, or was it a help?
Well, just to back up. So when I developed the concept, I then said, okay, I need an investor back. I need to put things together. So I spent most of 2018 developing the concept, trying to figure out what an ideal, you made comment of location search in your monologue. But I think that there are definitely some things that when you're developing a concept, you say, what do I need to have? Much like buying a house, right? When I bought my house, my realtor told me you need a needs and a wants list. These things are you absolutely have to have. These things are like the cream cheese that, would be extra. And that's pretty much what you do with a location in a restaurant, right? You say, this is what it has to have. I have to be able to do this many covers a day. It has to be this many square feet. I have to be able to operate this much. So that entire 2018, I really spent putting those components together. What do I need? What's the floor plan going to look like? What's the pro forma going to be? What's the pre-opening budget? What's the investor's return on investment? And then in 2019 is where I said, okay, now I'm going to go get those investors. We're going to start location searching. And we did that for much of 2019. At the beginning of 2020, and the concept migrated a little bit. So, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to jump around, but originally it was a food court concept. And what that means is, I think everybody's been to a mall. And at the mall, there's normally a food court. There's a Taco Bell, there's a Burger King, there's a Shake Shack, there's all these different. So what's happening in a lot of urban areas right now are food courts just like that are popping up. But instead of Taco Bell and Burger King, there's high-end chefs who are developing concepts. And the purpose of these food halls, there's communal seating, is again, reducing overhead and shared back-end space. So you don't need a walk-in because there's one huge walk-in and everybody gets a section of it. There's one big dishwasher. There's one big dry storage. You don't have to do the dining room. And so you come up, it's a quick serve. You place your order, you put everything in to go, and the guest leaves. But what that allows in those huge, densely populated urban areas is there's variety. If you and I work together, we can now go, hey, let's go down to the food hall and you can have Mediterranean food and I can have Japanese food and you can have a sandwich. And then we just sit and eat together. And it's when I was opening those that's when I was like, okay, I can do this. So we were searching for a location and I had always joked that I had wanted to be, not joked, I had always said that I wanted to be in Willis Tower, which is formerly the Sears Tower.
Right.
And I just didn't think that they would ever take a startup. So I thought, I have to get one location open. And then if I get that location open and can prove that I'm an operator, I'm going to go to Willis and say, figure out how to get there. So we were looking for locations and I made my broker's awesome. And I was like, let's just go look. And there was one location at Willis Tower. And I was like, that's my spot. And he, bless his heart, really tried to manage my expectation and remind me. But we just powered through it and we got accepted at Willis Tower and we were in lease negotiations and then the pandemic hit. So this was February of 2020. So it was a hindrance because I'm now waiting a year to do what I always wanted to do. However, it was I don't want to use the word blessing because that's not what I mean. I was fortunate that when the pandemic hit, I had not signed a lease. And so I wasn't tied into that financially quite yet. And the spot is still open and we're still now going after it. And so that's what it did. I was fortunate to be able to have that opportunity. I just have to wait a year and a half. And that's what the pandemic did for us.
So one thing I'm not sure. So is the food hall concept the same as a food court?
Yeah. It's just it's exactly what it is, except imagine it's in a building in downtown Chicago, downtown New York, downtown, where there's all these people and that's just where they go. But literally we're talking like a square, like you see the Taco Bell, 300 square feet, tiny.
And there's other food concepts that are there too. So that's what you're doing. So it's like a food court.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Well, I certainly know what a food court is. And I just hadn't heard the phrase food hall concept. But
because the food halls themselves are normally like the first floor of a building. So it's not a court where there's other things going on. There's normally a whole dedicated floor because on a lot of these businesses and office buildings, the developers see it as an amenity, right? Mm-hmm. You get an office in this top floor of this building and look, you just have to go to lunch downstairs.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. Very good. All right. Well, let me do a screen share and I'm going to we'll just kind of throw things up there and let you just kind of do your thing in terms of explaining what's happening. Here is obviously your logo.
Yep, that's it.
So what's the significance of the logo?
I just wanted something fresh and clean. It was super important to me. This is a family concept. So I put 4 leaves on it because the leaves represent me and my mother and my 2 grandmothers.
Mm-hmm.
But I love lemons, and I just thought it said fresh and clean, and yeah, I love it.
Perfect. And then this next slide is really the definition of Imee, but it's an Arabic word. You tell us all about it.
It means my mom's. So if you were to take Imee's kitchen and translate it to English, it would mean my mom's kitchen.
Oh, beautiful. Well, so there it is, Imee's kitchen. So, and then this next slide is kind of just a collage. Let's see, I'm losing my cursor. Here we go. This is just a collage of the family. Who are we seeing there?
So the top 2 are just pictures. The next picture right underneath, I'm pointing at my screen like you can see me. Yep, that's my mom's high school picture.
Uh-huh.
That is the journal that my grandmother kept when she came over to the United States on a boat.
And that's in Arabic.
Yeah, because she didn't read or write English. That's my mom and my aunt when they were babies.
Yep.
That's my father, my paternal grandmother, and my paternal grandfather. She's pregnant with my dad in that picture.
This picture here
she just found out she's pregnant with my dad.
Oh my gosh. Where is that picture taken in Detroit or
Niagara Falls, New York?
Niagara Falls. Oh, beautiful. And then this is the oldest picture down at the bottom left.
That is my mother's family, my mother's family. So my grandmother's family, those are my great grandparents and all of my grandmother is the one in the upper left.
Right here. Yeah.
That's my grandma.
And was that picture taken in Lebanon?
Yes.
Very good. Well, very good. So, so you wanted to have the flavor of it's basically Eastern Mediterranean, Lebanese cuisine. Now this next collage just sort of shows some of those dishes.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So
that's in the pink things are pickled turnips and beets. We call that lift.
Okay.
The meat and pine nuts is hashwi, and we eat it plain, or you put it in the kibbe that we'll serve. Obviously, everybody knows the hummus at the top. The yogurt is we call laban. It's just house-made yogurt.
Uh-huh.
And the salad right there is a fattoush, and I think everybody's probably familiar with fattoush salad. It's kind of like a Middle Eastern panzanella salad because it's got bread and toasted bread chunks in it.
Wow. And then this is just a sample menu, and we won't go through it, but the next couple of slides really are your, what you call the pitch deck, where you're, offering to investors. And I just wanted to kind of show them, is there anything specific, and what is that, a stamp up in the upper right-hand corner there?
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. All right. And then this is the location. This shows in Willis Tower, this is the Chicago Loop area. Is that part of is Willis Tower in the Loop?
It's in the Loop. The Loop is the highest density location outside of Manhattan it's the most densely populated work area outside of Manhattan in the United States.
Okay. And really your timing is good because, things are starting to open up again here. So, they're not open up yet, but at least there's light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. All right. And then this is just, this kind of just shows what that food court looks like. Is that correct?
Right. That's where our location would be. If you see the little Imee's lemon, that's actually where our location is.
There it is.
There it is. It's right in front. Willis Tower is such an interesting building because it houses not only 75,000 retail tenants, but 2 million people annually go to the Sky Deck. So it has retail tenants and tourists, which a lot of buildings don't have. And our location is directly in front of the elevators that go up to the Sky Deck. Those red lines represent traffic patterns. And you'll notice directly in front of our location, it's a T. So it's a high traffic pattern location.
It looks like you have a great location, an A spot, as they would say. All righty. And then now this next slide, oops, I've lost my cursor again. Here we go. This next slide, I love this because what you're doing here is you're really painting the big picture. And I love the big picture. Tell us what tell us what could be possible after one location, and then after a couple of locations. What's the big picture?
Well, the big picture for us, again, is to open. It really depends, 4 or 5 in the Chicago area, just depending on what makes the most sense. And then we'd like to expand definitely to the Midwest. And if there are opportunities to go nationwide, I think that would be amazing. But we will definitely go in Chicago and then the Midwest to start. But there's no reason why we can't duplicate this and scale this concept anywhere.
Yeah, and you compare it a bit to Panda Express, which started in the 80s, and they started out just as one restaurant, and then like 4 or 5, and then 2,000 a day.
Well, the thing about Panda Express is they're the only company that is a complete family-owned company. They don't have franchises. There's not any sort of corporate investors. That company has grown because a woman and a man opened a location. And that's what I think is so amazing about that, is they've been able to maintain that brand just themselves.
Great. Well, and then as far as like what you're offering, because you are open to investors coming and joining you. You also include investment terms. You have like balance sheets. You have return on investment ideas, and you also include additional charts that I decided not to show, but the equity terms, forward-looking statements and risk factors, how you plan to use the funds, and then additional press and information packages. So you've really put together a nice package. And I think it's, if someone's an investor, they should definitely, if someone is interested in this concept, they can, oh my gosh, I'm not advertising you. Let's do this.
Great.
They can reach out to Nicole Nassif at Imee's Kitchen.
Yep.
Very good. So yeah.
Thanks. Yep, that's it exactly.
All righty. So what else would you like to share with people at this point? Because it's a beautiful idea, and of course, we know each other, and I wanted to hear it. And I love the idea. I mean, when I think about, the time that I spent with, the restaurant we talked about. I mean, it was fun because it was growing. There's some kind of energy to be part of something special that's growing.
Yeah, opening restaurants is probably my favorite thing in the world. I think that's why I had such a reaction when you were describing it. I think, I always say you can always tell restaurant people, they just, I find, are a little more empathetic. They really understand how to take care of each other. For me, the restaurant industry, this is my job. It's my career. It's the real life thing that I do. And I do it not just because I fell into it and have to do it, but I do it because I love it. And what I think that really those years after Bubba Gump really taught me to have a greater appreciation for food and for the technique of food, because once you get past, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way at all, but some of those, the Chuck E. Cheese and the Bubba Gumps are really about volume and getting people in and out. And certainly they're not the only ones. But once you kind of get past that and really take the food to a level where there's a high degree of integrity, and it really, every single component makes such a big difference. I mean, I remember I was working with a chef who had this thing, and I always forget the name of it. I think it's called a Brinois chart. And it's this little index card that has all of these like squares on it, and all the squares are different sizes. And he would say to me, okay, you want to prep food, go in the kitchen and dice to this size. And he would give me the chart. And if each piece wasn't, then at the end, he would go through and match them up to the chart. And whichever ones didn't work, he would throw away. So, I mean, I think that I'm not really sure that I would do that to someone, but at the same time, I think just the level of detail really stuck with me, and really understanding how important each of those flavors are and doing it precisely right. And that's what makes a concept like this, for me, a little more exciting and challenging, because really knowing that we're grinding our own meat, we're making our own yogurt. everything that's going to come out of there, we're going to make. So I think when you take that and then say, okay, and in addition to that, we're going to do 300 covers or 300 people a day, making sure that every one of those items is perfect and not being able to cut corners is really exciting for me.
Let's go ahead and screen share one more time and just talk about the dishes, because I have better pictures. Let's see if I'm doing this correctly.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah. So what are we looking at here, Nicole?
So those are grape leaves. There's, the food will be Mediterranean, but I am Lebanese. So that's lift. Those are pickled turnips and beets. And we'll obviously we'll pickle those in-house. That's the laban, or the yogurt, that will be served a couple of different ways. What you're looking at right now is yogurt that's got garlic and mint and cucumbers in it, but we'll also serve it plain.
And here's the beans, rice.
Yeah. So that's called mjadra. That's the vegetarian dish. So that's brown lentils and rice that are cooked together. And that'll be served with the hummus and the fattoush salad.
It was funny when I was first reading the ideas, and you were talking about bowls and salads and combos. And I'm like, combos? And then I'm like, oh, we're just going to mix different ideas together.
Yeah. So, you can get a vegetarian dish. The menu will be limited. It's not going to be a 15-page menu because, again, a lot of the food hall concepts, part of it is it's a limited menu. So there'll be a beef dish, there'll be a chicken dish, there'll be a vegetarian dish, and then there's a combination where you can get certain elements. That's the tabbouleh, which is a salad made of parsley and wheat and tomatoes and mint and onions.
Well, good. It's interesting because people do want fast food, but they want healthy fast food. They want something that's good. So the food court is really going to replace the idea of the fast food market that, exploded in the country, 40, 50 years ago. And the concept hasn't died, but the food tastes have evolved and people want healthier and better. So Mediterranean, I'm guessing in the United States, people will go, oh, what's that? Oh, let me try it.
Right. Well, I think people are more aware of food now, right? I lived on Taco Bell growing up, right? I loved it. And I still love Taco Bell. But at the same time, I think people now are aware of what goes into food. They're aware of fresh ingredients. I just think people's knowledge of food, the same with cocktails, right? This whole craft cocktail movement, and everybody just understands food a little more. Social media is flooded with people who take pictures of their food before they eat. So the general population's knowledge of food, I would say over the past 10 or 15 years has certainly increased as well. So they know what's good for them and what's not good for them anymore, what's processed and what's not processed. And they also have a better appreciation for food that is fresh and done right, that maybe just didn't exist a few years ago.
If somebody is an investor who likes to, experiment and invest in different concepts, what should they do? You've got packages, but what would be the best thing for them to do?
Well, if they're interested, I see, thank you. You have the website scrolling at the bottom. If they go to that website, there's a contact page. They can reach out that way, fill it out. I can send them pitch decks. I'm always available to talk through both the menu or the details of the return on investments. One of the things that makes our concept a little different is the investors will get paid back with interest. We're offering a 7% interest, which isn't necessarily typical. People normally invest and they will get their initial investment paid off, but not with interest. So we're offering interest with that as well. And we're open to discussing, certainly there are things that are a couple of deal breakers for me that we won't be able to offer, but we really want to talk to anybody and work with people for what they might be interested in.
Great. And where are you in terms of, renegotiating the lease and getting, ready to go? Because things are going to start opening up fairly quickly here.
Well, that's so interesting because the concept is ready to go. I could open tomorrow. We've got the food, we've got the layout, we've got, the architect and the general contractor that I'm working with. are people that I've built restaurants with before, so we know each other. We've already value engineered the space, meaning we've already been in there. We've already looked at everything, structural engineers, electrical engineers, everybody have already walked through the space. So right now it's just this really interesting kind of, dart when we have to make sure that the city is ready for us. Right now, Willis Tower is only at 5% occupancy, which means of those 75,000 people, only 5% of them are returning to work in person every single day. One of the things that's very important to us is that we don't open until Willis Tower is at 75% occupancy. It makes no sense to open a location and pay that rent if nobody's going to show up. So we really would like to close this investment round by the end of April, simply because I just heard the president today say that there's now going to be enough vaccine for everybody through the end of May. So we want to be ready to go. We will not collect investment money until we go. We will just ask our investors to provide a line of credit letter, which we can submit to Willis Tower as proof that the money will be there. But I don't want to collect that money from the investors until we have just a firm enough date. I know that seems wishy-washy, but that's what's happening right now in the world. And we just need to kind of get all of our ducks in a row, be 100% ready so that when we can pull the trigger, we're ready to go.
The pandemic has certainly devastated hospitality and restaurants. When things open up, it seems like going back to the way it used to be is not going to be, really practical and, or possible, because there's just not going to be employees to bring back, and people aren't going to want to necessarily go into the, areas to seat. So it just seems like it's a pretty, it's a good, unique idea, and it might just be perfect timing.
I hope so. I definitely think that there are going to be things that hang over from the pandemic. For example, I think restaurants are almost better pivoters than any other industry. We can change on a dime and we can figure things out. And I think one of the things that I think is going to stay is certainly now everyone has really figured out how to do to-go, whether that's through mobile apps, whether that's through delivery, third-party delivery services, whether they've figured out how to deliver themselves. And I think that component of placing your order and picking up is going to stick. One of the things that Willis Tower opens that I found fantastic prior to the pandemic, because this was not new, is Willis Tower actually has an app that they've already developed and was working prior to the pandemic, where if you're one of those 75,000 people that work in the building, you can download the app to your phone and you can place an order for any of those restaurants in Willis Tower. And then they have somebody that comes down and picks it up for them and delivers it to their desk.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And that was before the pandemic. So I think something like that is going to even explode even more. And so we had already developed the concept to take advantage of that app, but I think something like that is just going to stick. And I think it's just going to help restaurants grow and grow, at least my restaurant.
Yeah, no, this is great. Well, what I would like to do is have you back in like a year from now when things are like I would never get you on the show if I didn't know you already, because you're too busy running around, and so it's a great story. So here's my offer. Like, keep us posted. You're welcome to come back anytime and update us as far as what is going on. And I just think it's a great a great idea. And let's, the world is all changed. So why not, the food courts or the food halls. And I love the idea that, healthier and variety, produced by, do you have a chef? Do you have somebody that you're working with, or how does that work?
So because the recipes are my family recipes, what I have is I'm a good home cook. Mm-hmm. So I have two different chefs who are kind of consulting for me, and they're helping me one is a Lebanese guy that I've known forever. And what they're helping me do is we're taking the food that I know how to prepare for 12 or 20 people. And we've prepared it together. And then he said, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's the equipment that you need. Here's how it needs to work. And he understands it. There is no chef that's going to be there every day, because in these fast casual or quick casual concepts, what I've always done in the past is I worked with these chefs, they've developed the concept, but the chefs aren't there every day. That's what the concept is. It's making sure that food happens the same way. You might change the menu every once in a while. So there won't be a chef per se, there will be me. And then anytime we want to do anything, I might reach back out to those people and say, give me some guidance, give me some advice. They've introduced me to a couple pieces of equipment that I had never heard of before, and that are really going to make such a big difference in the way that we produce things. So that's how I'm kind of utilizing those chefs.
So what will it take, like at full capacity, to operate one of them? How many people? Is it just like, a half a dozen or a dozen people, or not even that many?
We'd like to keep it under, the big thing for us more than anything is the prep, because again, the yogurt is all made from hand. We're getting the meat, the sirloin, we're literally trimming it ourselves. I'm grinding it myself. So the prep is a little more intensive, which is why we really need to capture that incremental revenue and get the turns in. So I think that once we do that, and I'm very fortunate because I have worked in Chicago long enough. And once I decided to do this, I had several staff members who used to work for me who said, whenever you're ready, you just go. So I feel like I'm half staffed already. So I think it's, and I say this all the time, if God forbid something happens and I don't do this for myself and I go get a real job, the real job I'm going to go get is literally doing this exact same thing for something else. So somebody else. So this is what I do.
I have one last slide to share. Why is it? Oh, I'm still learning how to make these buttons work. All right, now tell us who. That is who?
Me and my grandma.
All right, from the mother or father side?
My mother, and you can't see because the colors, but there's that picture is because she made me that white blanket. It's a white crocheted Afghan that she made me for Christmas one year. It's literally on my bed at this moment.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Well, very good. So it was really her and your other grandmother, and then your mother who were the inspiration for all of this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, very good. Well, what's your last, your last words to the American Gumption audience before we say goodbye?
Just thank you so much for having me on. It was just really nice to see you again. And this was fun. So thank you very much for thinking of me and for doing this. This was fun.
Oh, well, you're very welcome. I wish you lots of good luck. And again, you're a friend of the show, and I'd love for you to just check in with us as you get it opened, as you maybe start thinking about a second location. Come back, and even if it's just for like a few minutes, from time to time, you're welcome anytime. We'd love to keep you, have you be part of the American Gumption journey, because really American Gumption is all about ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things, and this is an extraordinary concept. So I wish you lots of good luck.
Thank you. It was really nice. Thank you, Steve. This was really nice.
All righty. Well, there, Nicole Nassif, grateful that she joined us this morning. Imee'sKitchen.com. If you have an interest in learning more and you want to be on the ground floor of a concept, go ahead and reach out to Nicole directly through her website. All righty. Well, that's it, everybody. We're going to go ahead and wrap today's show up. Now, tomorrow I will be back with a live show, and let's see here. I'm changing some buttons. Give me just 1 second here. Let's go ahead and put the change that banner. We also have a comment. Let's see here. Oh my gosh. We have Kim giving kudos to Nicole. We have other people checking in. Stacy, Tina from Alberta, Kim again. So lots of people who are fans of Nicole checking in. We thank you for joining us this morning. All righty. So tomorrow, Stacy Lamar King returns, and we're going to talk project management. That'll be a fun show. And then Friday, Jay Toops, technology and the social and political will that's necessary to get his waste carbons to alcohol up and running. So kind of an environmental day we'll be doing on Friday. All righty. That's it. Have a great day, everybody. I will see you all tomorrow. My computer is going a little slow. Now I might even be frozen up. I don't know what's happening here. I might just end the broadcast without the show unless my computer unfreezes, which doesn't seem to be happening. All righty. Well, we'll see you all tomorrow. Oh, there it is. Now it's unfrozen. Here we go. Let's try this before something else happens.